Will you work until age 75? Stay with me. First things first, I want to announce the Your Rich Auntie newsletter. There's a lot of information that I provide in the newsletter that I don't get to provide here in the channel. So if you're interested, please go to the link in the pinned comment section or in the description section of this video and sign up. Also, I'm getting closer to having 7,500 subscribers. If you watched but haven't subscribed, please go to the subscribe button and click that button. So let's talk about retirement and what's happening in terms of aging and retirement. So, one thing that I've noticed as a financial advisor, I've been doing this for about 10 years now, is there is a slow upcreep in age that people expect to work. It's in the American vernacular that people think they're going to work until age 65. And a lot of people don't make it to 65 because they're laid off or their company's restructured or something happened and they're let loose. But I've noticed over the past decade, there's been an uptick in the number of people who are working longer. Now, some people want to work longer. I want to make that clear. Some people want to work longer. They're in careers that they love or careers that they trained for a really long time. And it's always been their intention to work as long as possible, or at least until their 70s. But that is more the exception than the rule. The vast majority of people are often working longer for financial considerations. And I think what's happening right now with baby boomers and silent generations were the only generations to really enjoy the benefits of pension. About half of baby boomers and silent generation have access, at least one partner, either the husband or wife, have access to a pension. And pretty much Gen X, millennials, and Gen Zs, that's pretty much gone. Only about 14% of millennials and Gen Zers have access to a pension. So pensions, Social Security, and 401ks were the backbone of the American retirement experience. What I'm starting to see as a financial advisor is the shift of retirement from baby boomers to Gen X, and retirement is going to look very different. So let me give you a few numbers, and some of these numbers are quite shocking. So back in 2005, so 20 short years ago, only 5% of Americans over the age of 70 worked. Now, anywhere from 18 to 19%, nearly 1 out of 5 Americans over the age of 70 work. About 9% of Americans over the age of 75 still work. So those numbers are surprising. In 20 short years, we went from 1 out of 20 to 1 out of 5 people working over the age of 70. And I think for Gen X, who is the next generation that will retire, that number is going to grow. I think by time the cohort of Gen X completely retires, you're going to have anywhere from 1/3 to 40% of people over the age of 70 working. And people may have various thoughts about that. I see it in my own practice of people who are planning to work longer and retire later. Some of it is self explanatory. They've trained a very long time to be in that field and they want to work as long as possible. Or maybe they shifted careers. I've had a few career changers. They trained for that career in their 50 and they just want to put in 20 years in that career because it took them forever to get that master's degree or that bachelor's degree to be able to do that line of work and they want to work as long as possible. But for a lot of people, it's other considerations that keep them in the workforce that longer. Eventually, I'm going to do some calculations on what retirement at 70 or at age 75 looks like. But of course, it looks completely different because if you retire at age 75, you simply have less years of life in retirement. The average age that the average American dies is about 78. It varies widely based on gender, race, education, location where you live in the United States, occupation, there's a bunch of things. But typically, the average American dies around age 78. But many Americans in many parts of the country, like here in San Francisco Bay Area, can probably expect to live until 90, maybe even 95. And if you do a good job of keeping yourself healthy and fit, 75 is still a pretty active age for retirement. But if you're working in a very physically demanding career, if you're putting roofs on houses or driving trucks or construction, plumbing, things like that, that are very physically demanding on the body, maybe the concept of working to 75 is just unthinkable to you. And I totally understand that. Let's talk about some of the reasons why people continue working beyond the age of 70. We talked about personal preference. Someone changed career in their 50 and they just want to work in their 70s. I have clients who love careers, typically people who are therapists. Psychiatrists want to continue working in their 70s. Accountants, a lot of accountants continue working into their 70s, if not full time, at least part time. Lawyers, people in legal fields, depends on what legal field they're in. There's some legal fields that are much more intense than others, but I've had a lot of lawyers continue working, and financial advisors. A lot of financial advisors continue working until their 70s. So some careers just are very amiable to working longer, and some careers are just not very amiable. But sometimes it is personal preference. Sometimes it's healthcare costs. Even with Medicare, getting on Medicare at age 65, a lot of people realize, especially if they have very complicated health histories, or they have a partner with a very complicated health history, or family member with a very complicated health history, they realize they have not saved enough to be able to cover the costs associated with the healthcare issues that they have. And so you do encounter people in the workplace who are over 65, but who are still working because they need to cover expensive healthcare for themselves in supplement to what they're getting out of Medicare. So some people are working longer to be able to cover healthcare costs. Financial necessity, that's the big one. That's the elephant in the room. A lot of people work into their 70s out of financial necessity, and that one is the most difficult to bear. No one, I think, in America wants to be working at 75 or in a job that they don't like or don't really want because they weren't able to save enough money for retirement when they were younger. And once again, the silent generation, baby boomer, had the benefit of pensions. I think that really cemented retirement for baby boomer silent generation, whereas Gen X, millennials, Gen Z does not have that safety net. And I think it's going to unravel a lot of retirements not to have access to pensions. Personally, what I'm seeing as a financial advisor, it's a bit scary. Retirement used to be a bedrock concept for the American experience. It's like buying your first home, getting your job, et cetera. Everyone was pretty much guaranteed a retirement. And some people would have more lavish retirements than other, but basically the guarantee was if you worked 30, 40, however many years in our society, you would be able to retire. That is changing, and that is going to change. Retirement is quickly becoming a concept only for either the upper middle class, the wealthy, or the very wealthy. And the irony of it is the people who are very wealthy rarely retire early. They often want to keep working because they have good working conditions. They basically own the company, or they call the shots, or they design the system so that they're working, and they're working hard in some respect, but they have a great deal of autonomy over their time, their day, their effort. And so they don't mind working. The professions that I outlined, counseling, therapy, accounting, legal, wealth managers, we have a great deal of autonomy over our day and how we spend our time. And so it's not so much to ask to say, can you work another 5 years into your late 60s or early 70s? But for people who don't have that level of autonomy or don't have full control over their working experience, I can understand that this can be very shocking and very disconcerting. But I already see it forming, especially for millennials and Gen Z. Unless you are upper middle class or unless you are wealthy, retirement is going to become a thing of the past, unfortunately, unless we make some changes to the American system that really keeps retirement as a bedrock concept for all Americans. There's a few ideas that I have for people who are like, there is no way I'm going to be in the workplace at 70. I'm getting out of here at a reasonable age. What do I need to do? First things first is starting early. You have to start investing and saving early. You probably don't have a pension. Social Security is developing more of a question mark. This is really a canoe that you're going to have to paddle through life alone. And the earlier you can start, the earlier you can start investing, the more of an opportunity you're going to be able to get out of the workplace in your mid 60s or at a reasonable age for you. So start early, start investing early, start using 401ks and retirement accounts that are available to you as early as possible in your 20s, preferably to start saving for retirement. If you start saving for your retirement in your 50s, it's almost a guarantee you're going to have to work until your 70s. It's just too late in the game to save enough money to be able to sustain a retirement. Keeping lifestyle in check. There's some people who I have as clients, as long as they're willing to live a pretty basic lifestyle, they can retire in a reasonable amount of time. But if they want a very lavish lifestyle, you got to work for that. You got to save the money for that. And one thing that I advise people who are planning out their retirements, who are relatively young, is have realistic lifestyle aspirations. You're probably not going to be able to ramp up your lifestyle in retirement. It's probably going to require kind of ramping back your lifestyle. And as long as you are comfortable doing that, we can figure out how to forge ahead with creating a retirement. It's really hard creating a retirement with someone it's really hard creating a retirement for someone who really doesn't have realistic aspirations of what they'll be able to afford or the lifestyle that they will have in retirement. Next, finding a career that you love. People often change careers many times, and that's okay. As you start to get older, it becomes a bit more difficult, right? And especially if you're laid off in your 50s and 60s, there's a lot of ageism that still occurs in the workplace. And I'm hoping for Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z, we see a peeling back of that concept of ageism and we allow people to have more latitude and exploration in their careers. But one thing I tell people in their late 40s, 50s who are switching careers, they need to be switching into something that is sustainable. You can go at a different level in your 20s and 30s than you can in your 50s or 60s. And if you were making a career change in your 50s or even in your 60s, picking a career that you are loving and that you can really enjoy, and picking a career that is not going to drive you crazy or put extra stress on your mind, your spirit, or your body is very important. Look at fields where you see a lot of older people happily working, like I outlined a few of those fields. Is that a field that you would be comfortably interested in? Look around and see who's surrounding you. If the field you want to go into is nothing but 20 and 30-year-olds, that kind of tells you the experience that you're going to have, and that working in that field at age 60 may not be a possibility for you. Picking a career that you love and is not going to be overtaxing on your mind, your spirit, your body is important for working potentially longer. Next, children. When you have children is very important. If you have children in your 40s, it almost guarantees that you're going to have to extend your working career. It's hard to retire when your kid's in college or when your kid just gets out of college. I have some clients who've made the decision, and sometimes it just happens that you have children later in life, and you really have to prepare them and set them up so that they can and likely will have to work longer than the average American in order to successfully raise the child to adulthood and be able to cover the expenses that they are interested in covering for the child, like college. Next is, and this one is super important, finding a partner that supports your goal of retirement. I have seen more partners basically upend people's retirements. They married someone who wasn't as financially savvy as they were, or wasn't, as diligent in saving and investing as they were, or even they divorced at a later point in their lives, which basically reset the clock on their retirement aspirations. It's really important. It's not typically a conversation that couples in their 20s and 30s have, but people who come together in their 40s, 50s, 60s, having important conversations about what is your concept of retirement? What have you done for retirement? Have you saved anything? When are you planning to retire? Because a partner can really upend your goals for retirement. So there you have it. I'm going to do a second video where I'll run some numbers, but I wanted to introduce the concept of potentially working until age 75. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you like and what you don't like. And if you found this information useful, please share and subscribe.